Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. As per usual, my name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host. This week, we're a man down. It's just me and Scott. Scott, how are you doing this evening?
Hey Ben, how you doing? Hello everyone. I think I learned a couple of things this weekend. One of which we all already knew, and that is, guess what, everyone? You need a bit of quality in your side to win football matches. We saw quite a few sides this weekend only really getting over the line because of the quality that they have in their sides. And the other thing I learned was we probably shouldn't ask mascots to go out pitch side in 45-degree heat. I don't know if anybody saw Binky at Styen with his giant water pistol and poor old Kempan, Westerlo's mascot, who is a chicken or a rooster. I don't know which. Is there a difference? Anyway, there was some proper deep fried chicken going on there.
Oh, man. Good times, good times. Yeah, I was watching the Veslo Standard game, and they panned to him, didn't they, before, without the hat on. It's like kind of going behind the curtain. It's like the mascot is actually a human, and you could see him. And you could see like he put that hat on at the very last minute. But absolute kudos to blokes that get dressed up, or even if I don't know how many female mascots there are, but men and women who dress up as mascots for football matches in this heat deserve all the credit and a pay rise probably because it was mentally hot out there this weekend. And to be fair, Scott, it didn't affect massively in terms of the entertainment we had. We had some good games this weekend. Let me just quickly run through the scores. Oostend Ghent kicked off the weekend. No better way to kick off a Friday night than by the sea. Oostend lost this one 3-1. Really good game. Lots to talk about there. Veslo, as previously mentioned, against Standard. That one finished 4-2. Lots to talk about there. Cercle Brugge Mechelen drew 0-0. Not so much to talk about. And then Selang lost 1-0 to Charleroi. Union then beat Kortrijk 2-1, putting midweek's disappointment behind them. St. Truden welcomed Anderlecht to an absolutely steaming Stijn Stadium for that one. Anderlecht won 3-0. Antwerp just about got across the line against a battling Eupen side 1-0. Club Brugge back to winning ways with a 3-0 win over Leuven. And then Genk beat Zulte again 4-1, which is also the same result that Young Genk got in their game. Got some good stats from that from Joris. I mean, he may not be here, but he's still contributing to the podcast anyway. What more could you ask for? Let's start with Oostend against Ghent. This was an absolute cracking game to kick off the Friday night, I thought. Oostend took the lead in this one, continuing their fine run of form. It was David Atanga again. What a season, what a start to the season he is having. I think it was Kenny Rocha Santos with the pass, not Nick Batsner this time. Into him, first touch out of his feet, fabulous finish. They'd had a couple of chances before. I think Batsner admits an absolute sitter at the back post. However, just 10 minutes later, Ghent got their noses back into this one. Hugo Kuipers, who else? Bit of a deflected kind of falls to him in the box. He puts it away. And then probably the goal of the weekend, I think Will Downing maybe called it potential goal of the season. Hyun Suk Hyung on his debut, recently signed from Lastellins, straight into the side. And he gets an absolute screamer in this one. Cross in from the left-hand side. He just overhead kicks it into the back of the net. What a finish from Hong. What a start to his Ghent season, Ghent career even. And then had to beat Andrew Hulsaga. He is kind of refining his form now. Struggled a little bit with it first move to Ghent in the back, kind of first part of last season with injuries as well. Starting to see the Hulsaga we saw in Oostend. He got the third goal in this one to wrap it up. Didn't celebrate out of respect for his old club. And it finished 3-1 to Ghent. Really, really good game. Scott, I know you watched this one as well. Just a great game of football and a good win for Ghent.
Yeah, it was a good game in the coast Friday night, like you say, in the heat. Everyone probably, free hopping just up from the beach from the game, of course, no doubt, since it's only a 5-minute walk away. I thought Oostend started kind of quite brightly. They played some quite nice football, particularly in the kind of opening 15 minutes. They were knocking the ball about quite nicely and pressing pretty aggressively as they do when they're playing well, and started this game really decently. Atanga's goal was a brilliant bit of quality, I thought. Just got me out of my seat. It was good enough to do that. Lovely goal. But actually, I think, the story of this game is that Ghent just, as I was saying earlier, a weekend in which the importance of quality being emphasised really. This is the first game in which we saw this really kind of come to the fore. Ghent's distribution with the balls we know is very good, and I think ultimately Ostend allowed Ghent to play their natural game. It was interesting to hear Yves van der Heijden afterwards talking about how disappointed he was that the things that they'd highlighted before the game in terms of Ghent's strengths, they ignored. They allowed them to, to play their best football, especially after going in front. I suppose it's kind of doubly disappointing if you look at it like that. Hong's goal, absolutely brilliant, and everyone's been talking about that all weekend. I was pretty impressed with him even before he scored. I thought he's looking really good technically, really good work rate as well, which you would expect from somebody who's come from Lask. You'll be used to playing really high intensity football because of the work rate that their style of play demands. So I think he's going to be a really, really good addition. And Samuel Cardenas, who's the head scout at Ghent, was talking just a few days ago after they kind of confirmed that signature, how they've been really tracking him for quite some time and working on this deal, because nobody really got wind of this until it was official as well, which doesn't happen very often with transfers these days. So it's nice for a transfer to be under the radar and then a player to impress on their debut. Having said that, and this is the thing I find really funny, a lot of people have probably missed this, but down in the amateur divisions this weekend, Julien Vercauteren scored, I think, what was an even better goal for Lokeren, which if you go and check out our Twitter account, everybody, we've shared that goal so you can compare Hong's and Vercauteren's goal. But there is an even better goal doing the round than Hong's, believe it or not.
Yeah, that goal, that Lokeren goal, like it's one of those ones that you've seen quite a lot, like kind of in just inside the opposition half, don't you? Where like someone just shoots and the keeper's it goes over the keeper's head, and I always find those a little bit overrated because I always think it's just bad goalkeeping. But this one's not, because he like juggles it, like he does tricks with the ball before he does it. Like that's what makes this one so good from down there. So
it doesn't. That's right, isn't it? The ball's headed back to him, and he's on the halfway line, almost on the touch line. So he's not even central. He's out pretty wide, and he takes two touches to keep the ball in the air, and then just smashes it right over the keeper. And it's just like, what are you doing? It was just amazing.
yeah, absolutely unreal, and like definitely not an underrated goal. Did want to make a quick kind of correction on myself. It was Nick Batsner who got the assist for the first goal. 3 assists for Batsner so far this season. Every single one of them is to David Atanga. I think Yorish put it in the chat, was like, why did these two not play more last season? They clearly have a great link up. Like all of Atanga's goals have come from Batsner. He's got 3 goals in 4 matches. Potential call up for the Ghana national team, potentially for the World Cup. Who knows? If he keeps playing like this, he'll definitely be on the fringes of that. But I think for Ostend, they've started really well considering kind of the schedule that they had. Starting against Anderlecht, they were lost 2-0 there. Then beating Mechelen and Charleroi, like you can kind of accept this loss to Ghent because you've got those 6 points, and the kind of the matches get a little bit easier now with St. Truden, Leuven, Standard, Eupen, and Cercle kind of to come. So games you'd expect them to be a little bit more competitive in. But I was impressed with them, but I was also impressed with Ghent without Tisu Dali. They got De Poitre back, Ajija was back, so a couple of players coming back in. Which is really, really good for them. Hein van Huyzenbroek being his usual moany self, just mooding around the touchline, looking decisively pissed off at everything and anything that was going on in the world. Which, I mean, I know you're not a massive fan of it, Scott. I just find him hilarious to watch on the touchline. I just find him constantly entertaining, but I can imagine if you're up against him, he's bloody annoying.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? It's like, it's always great for entertainment. I mean, what I noticed this weekend, and it was something obviously we chatted about before, I noticed that at half time, some of his players were giving the officials quite a hard time. And I thought that's kind of one of those things that comes as a result of a manager setting a slight bad example, I think. Players are going to do that, even though that they shouldn't. But I thought if you've got a manager who tends to let loose on officials, most weeks because it's just who he is, and it's in his personality. I think if you do that, then you're basically saying to your players that that's kind of all right, and I don't think that's great. The interesting thing is obviously Ghent have taken a pretty proactive stance on how unhappy they are with the general standard of officiating. They released that statement, didn't they, a few weeks ago, which I think would have been better if they'd got some other clubs to kind of countersign, to be honest. But, it's fair enough. These things, it's a fine line between, being an appropriate role model and, kind of legitimising what is slightly problematic behaviour. But yeah, I mean, he scores an 11 for entertainment value most weeks.
Completely agree, and I'm sure they could have easily found people to counter-sign that with them. Like, it's not kind of. We know that there's some issues with the officiating in Belgium, and there has been. Let's move on from that cracker of a Friday night to the steaming hot game at Westerlo against Standard. And yeah, sorry, Standard fans that might be listening, because you probably do not want to relive this one. And I don't know, I think to kind of sum it up for them, Nicola Askin, Selim Amala, quality players. Big fan of both of them. Amala especially, I love the way he plays. Raskan as well, love the way he plays. They look so out of place in this Standard side. It's like, I don't even know how to kind of compare it. It's like when I was watching, to bring in a cricket analogy, which we lost on lots of people, but on Sunday I went to watch a cricket game in Hove, and there was an Indian Test international player, highest level, playing against, basically in a development league at the moment is what it is, because all the best international players are playing somewhere else. He's basically playing against a bunch of kids, and he took them apart. And these two are basically like two players playing with a bunch of kids, in the sense that they're just so above the level of what the rest of the team are. And it really did show in this game. I was so disappointed in that side. Westerlo just really went for them. I thought they were fantastic. I thought DX on the right side was great. He created so many problems. We saw a start for Nene Douglas, who there's signs of a good player there. I think he was a bit lightweight in some instances, like Leifis and Dusen could push him around, but when he wanted to get on the ball, he was quite exciting and good. Vetokele was silent for most of the game, but in quite a good way. I felt like he was just kind of biding his time and waiting, and eventually he got his chance. Ball in from Dex. Leifis and Dusen just not defending it. Duval's just nowhere as well. Vetokele just sneaks in, heads it in to make it 1-0. Had kind of been coming. Standard had a couple of chances, had a penalty shout before that. Alan Donham running in. Maxime de Kuiper, I think it was, just kind of barges him over. It was clumsy. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been given, but it was also looks a little bit soft. Before that as well was kind of what I was talking about in terms of the creation and stuff. Raskan gets it on the edge of the box, flicks it over to Dennis Dragus. Bollat's kind of coming out, so you're like, right, just head it over him or volley it over him, and he passes it sideways, but no one's there, and it's honestly shocking. I don't understand what he was doing, and Dragus has been kind of slightly better than some of the others in terms of you think maybe you could eke 7 or 8 goals out of him this season, potentially. But that just kind of, it summed it up, because Alaska just plays such a good ball over the top and no one knows what to do with it. Emond was non-existent in this game. I don't know what he was doing. Scott, you said it, Davala had an absolute nightmare first half, and we were quite surprised, both of us, that he was still on the pitch in the second half. But they're only 1-0 down at this point. Soon 2-0 down in the 50th minute after half-time. Ball in between Davala and Dusen that just kind of splits the two of them far, far too easily. It's just kind of comical how bad that was and how easy it was for them to play Douglas in with that kind of pass through. Out comes Boutte because, he has to. Out comes Bodart, sorry, not Boutte. Out comes Bodart because, he just has to come out to kind of stop the ball from Jan Bernat. He kind of saves it. There's a tackle and the ball kind of ricochets off Douglas and goes in. Debut goal, I guess we can say, kind of continuing that, kind of a good week for debutants. Not the best of goals, let's be honest, but at that point it's 2-0 to Westerlo, and I've got to say shout out to the Standard fans, because they're still singing at this point, despite the terrible, terrible performance their side's putting out on the pitch. Somehow they get back into it. Good to see Abdul Tapsoba back from his injury. He comes on for Emon in the 60th minute. I think at that point, it's just ringing the changes for Ronnie Dyler, like Donham off, Simrot off, like Bojovic comes on, Tapsoba comes on, like I said, Bacardi comes on. And it's a Bodart assist, funnily enough, just absolutely launches the ball. Awful from Seegers and Pedicici. Like, it's just, what are they doing at the back? Tapsoba runs in. Bollat's not really sure Bollat's not really sure what to do either. Tapsoba kind of takes it round him just about and taps it in. Instant change when Tapsoba came off. They had the runner going in behind. They had a little bit more dynamism up front. So I hope to see more of him starting. At that point, you're like, right, Standard have been bad, but they are back in this game now. Like, potentially they can claw way back to a draw and maybe then push on and win it. Maybe it just needed that. However, 73rd minute, they're 3-1 down. And the one defender who hadn't actually played that badly compared to the rest then makes a mistake. Poor old Jakob Barrett Larson with an own goal. Ball comes across. He just kind of sticks it in his own net. And it just sums it up, really. 3-1 at that point. Somehow they still managed to get back into the game. Noah Descend grabs the goal in the 90th to put them back in it. However, literally a minute later, they concede again. Lyle Foster with his first of the season. The young South African makes it 4-2. And to compound things even more, they're going to be missing Amala because he gets himself sent off in the 96th. Just pure frustration from him. Scott, I feel for Standard fans because we knew Ronnie Dyler had a big job, but this performance was really bad. And it's like they're not the best team. We understand that, but you expect with a standard team for them to at least show some fight and show some kind of battle and put in the effort in this. But in this game, they were second best in every facet, and Westerlo really did deserve the win.
Yeah, I think Ronnie Dyler now understands after this weekend's game quite the size of the task that faces him, and he was aware of it before. But that performance was the sort of performance we saw, week in week out last season and the tail end of the season before, when it was obvious there was no quality in the side. Obviously, you mentioned Raskin and Amala, and Ronnie Dyler was saying after the game that he really wants clarification on those two as soon as possible because he wants to hold on to them. Rightly so, because he knows arguably they are the only two players of sufficient quality in the entire squad, to be blunt about it, really. I came out on my own social media after the game and said, you've got to question the mentality of this group of players, which we already know about, but it's very difficult for him because I was thinking, well, the starting 11 that Ronnie Dyler picked there is probably exactly the same one I would have picked by and large, if I'm honest, because I think that's probably the best 11, but there are far too many players in that squad at the moment who just don't look that interested, and particularly when a game's going against them, there's no energy, there's no fight, there's no desire or anything, and a lot of them just didn't look interested really at all. I felt really sorry for Salim Amala. You were talking about him. He actually had a pretty decent game. He looked energetic. He was trying to make things happen, and I think he just got really pissed off actually with the fact that he wasn't getting any support, and it was almost a one-man band, just him and Raskan, the only two really with any kind of decent work rate. And like you're saying, it was that bad that ultimately he ended up deliberately getting two silly yellows to get sent off to put himself out of his own misery, believe it or not. I think it's really important for Standard to hold on to these two. At the moment, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to hold on to both of them, that's for sure. A lot of rumours still surrounding Nicholas Raskan and discussions with Club Bruges at the moment. I think Salim Amala's not decided himself whether he's for staying. So the kind of ongoing will they, won't they, it isn't going to reach, I think, a conclusion probably until very close to the end of the window, and we know there's still 3 weeks of that to go. So that's not a good thing from a Standard point of view for all of that unsettled stuff to still be around them. And obviously Ronnie Dyler can't change very much. He's got very little to work with at the moment. So he has to now make the difficult decision between, do I stick with these guys who started by and large the 4 games so far and persevere with them at the moment, or do I bring in some players who haven't impressed me so far, but I need to change things up, and it's very, very difficult for him. I said pre-season he really needed to be given a bye pretty large this season, and it's just been reinforced with everything I've seen so far. Fergal Harkin's come in now, and he's working on transfers, and they're trying to get some out the door to allow more to come in, and they're working very hard on this. But it's definitely going to be a slow process, and they were just awful. Westerlo, on the other hand, made this look kind of quite easy and could have scored more than four. But the story of this game is by and large a story of abysmal defending on both teams' parts. Both the goals that Westerlo conceded were completely avoidable and just were through simple lack of concentration, really. Slightly bizarre game, really, all round, I thought.
Yeah, bizarre's definitely the word. And you're right, if they lose Raskin and Mala, you've got to worry for them, like, massively, because, who's coming into those positions? Like, Chanak, young player, he's been quite exciting when he's come on, but is he ready for full time? Tapsoba, like I said, I liked what I saw when he came on, but is he ready to be the player that they need? Ohio's injured for a little bit now, which is a shame because he looked quite exciting. But fair play to Westerlo, that's a big kind of win for them after a couple of bad results, so they will certainly be happy with that. Cercle Bruges against Mechelen. Going to be very honest, I didn't watch this game. It finished 0-0, so I have no idea if there's anything to talk about from this one. Scott, if you've got anything you want to talk about from this one, but I feel like a 0-0 is always quite difficult to kind of chat about anything that happened. I mean, according to Footmob, Vladislav Majewski was man of the match, so I guess it says something about him doing pretty well to keep a clean sheet. They'll both be happy, I guess, with clean sheets, but I guess we can say that for Mechelen, it's quite weird to see them getting a 0-0. It's not something we're really used to.
Yeah, I mean, this was, for a 0-0, this was actually quite a decent game. And I thought this might have been one of the games of the weekend because both these sides, for quite a wee while now, have been playing pretty good football, I think. They're both quite good to watch. And I had a feeling that this was going to be one of those games that everyone wants to see, two sides really having a go at each other. And by and large, that was the story of the game. Unsurprisingly, I'm going to use a cliche here, everybody. Sorry about this, but they did kind of cancel each other out. Neither side played that badly. I think Cercle probably narrowly maybe deserved the win. They did slightly more than Mechelen, I think, and maybe deserved to edge it. You're right. Majewski did have a pretty decent game all round, and he's starting to actually look quite good. In the early days for him at Cercle. From a Mechelen point of view, it was nice to see Jonas Malady get some decent game time. Regular listeners will know that I like Jonas. I think he's a good young player who just needs to be playing regularly to continually improving, and I think he's got lots to offer. He just needs to, like I say, play regularly and work on his final ball a lot. And he had a decent enough game. We've alluded to the fact that the balance isn't quite right yet with Mechelen. We spoke about that last week, and I think that's still true. I think there are some players in that side who arguably aren't good enough really maybe for this level, despite having played at this level before. So they're kind of still finding their feet, Mechelen under Danny Boyce, still tweaking away there. Dominic Talhammer saying afterwards he felt they were genuinely the better side through all of the game and were pretty unlucky sort of not to win it, which it's hard to kind of disagree with. But for a 0-0 that didn't have too many talking points in it, it was a decent game.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't help for Mechelen, obviously missing Julian Ngoy for a slight knock, who, I mean, in that last game against Union, it looked like he was starting to find his feet within their system and stuff. So it's frustrating that he's then had that little setback, but hopefully he'll be back soon. The game that was taking place at the same time saw Salang against Charleroi. Still came out in the media before this and said, yeah, he's starting to feel some pressure, which I think is a bit unfair. I think maybe he's kind of preempting it. I don't know, because he realizes they haven't got a goal scorer. But we said, I know you've been saying it quite a lot as well, Scott, that they were ahead of schedule last season. So we kind of got to rein the expectations in a little bit. They lost Shamar Nicholson halfway through the season. They replaced him with Bayo, who proved a great replacement. They've now lost him. They haven't replaced him. So I think it's a bit unfair to be under pressure. But this was obviously a must-win game against the worst team in the Pro League. Maybe one of the worst teams the Pro League's ever seen. I don't know. I would have to ask Joris and other people about that. If you can remember worse teams than this Salang side, please do let us know. I'd be love to kind of do a deep dive into that. But didn't score again this game. However, it did take Charleroi until the 85th minute for Jackson Chatswai to score after a Zorgan assist. Badji was dropped. Ben Bawali came in to play instead alongside Golizade. So Ed is still clearly kind of moving stuff around to try and work out where his best team is. Knezovic was injured, so they didn't have him. Van Kleepert's still injured as well. For Salang, they kind of tried something new, I guess. Went for the 3-5-2, Elisor Mondo Maggi on at the same time. Neither really that effective. Rumours are that linked with Sebastian De Vast. He could be coming in shortly to play in the centre back for them. I mean, I think that's a good signing. I think that's a sort of player they kind of need, but not in the position they need. They need someone that's going to put the ball in the net, because no one in that team is putting the ball in the net. 11 shots, only 3 on target for them in this game. Charleroi 13-5, but only putting 1 in. I guess, Scott, for Charleroi, this is like they needed to win this, but to relieve a little bit more pressure on Ed Still, which I don't think there should be, but we'll talk about that as well. They probably would have liked to win this by a much bigger margin than they did.
Yeah, I think your point about Ed is important, because despite them being ahead of schedule, I think the loss of Bio, who was actually doing very well, is a sore one for them. Badji, just hasn't really been doing anything at all. Actually, he's been working quite hard, but not really clicking or getting much joy. So I think obviously Ben Bouali and Golizade effectively sort of playing up front this weekend was interesting. They're trying to find sort of the right combination. I don't know whether they've decided that Badji is not going to be it. I think Ed's comments about feeling the pressure I thought were really interesting, because to me I read them as that's a signal, open signal in the media to the club. And to Mehdi by it, that look, you need to give me a little bit more here. We maybe need another striker in. There's 3 weeks of the window. We need some more movement yet. And we know they don't have a bad squad. There is enough quality to do quite well at this level there. And it's they've lost a couple and won a couple, so it could be worse. But I think all things considered, he deserves a little bit more time, Ed Still. And we need to see what comes out of the rest of the window for them. I think at the moment he's probably a bit frustrated that he had a system and a reasonably settled squad that was working for them, and then he's lost a key part of that. And I think that flipping players is something that Charleroi, in terms of their transfer policy, they've been extremely successful with for a number of years and are going to continue to do that. So it's that worry of how many times can you keep producing a rabbit out of a hat. I think they have enough to do all right. They just they need to settle down and kind of give Ed some time. And obviously there's been some internal whispers possibly as well, but there's enough quality there for them to kind of do all right. So like you, Ben, I completely agree. I was a bit surprised by that. Sarang, it's the same old. It feels a bit like deja vu, really. They're, I suppose, trying new things, obviously, week on week. Little tweaks here and there just to see if any of them have any kind of quantifiable difference at all. But like you say, without a decent striker who's going to get anywhere in the region of 10 to 15 goals for you minimum, then it's going to be a slow torture for them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and bring in another striker before the end of the window, just because they have to try something else. What's there at the moment isn't working and isn't enough. And there are only so many tweaks that Jose Junchamps can do, can't he?
Yeah, he's got his hands tied with that squad at the moment, and I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the fans. I feel bad for the players as well, because it's not it's not their fault. They are who they are in that sense, and they clearly are trying to win games for the club. I don't think you can accuse them of that. Like, they play hard, they work hard. They're gonna try and make it as difficult for teams as possible. They just don't have the quality, and that's kind of just is what it is. So yeah, and yeah, you mentioned they go get a striker in, but who? I just don't know where they're going to get one from. Like, that's their kind of big issue. They do need Kaloita back. I think getting him back in the squad gives them another leader on the pitch alongside Lapointe. Bernier's shown that he's trying to kind of be a leader. When I've watched the games, he's trying to push them on again. But again, he's never been like a goal scoring winger in that sense. So yeah, and on Charleroi, I mean, his system, what Ed likes in his system is Kelly. He loves that physical presence up front, like Nicholson and Bayo. They're bully defenders. Ben Bouali, he's not really a bully in that sense. I've liked what I've seen from him so far, but Badji as well, not really a bully. Golizade's not a bully. Zari is not a bully. And I say that with like out of respect for that style of play. I love that sort of a striker, kind of who will play the physical side of it, which is what you need in Belgium. You need that physical presence, and if they can get someone in with that physical presence, like I remember, were they not linked with Depotre like a few months ago? I don't think that will happen now, obviously, with the injuries that have gone up at Ghent, but someone like a Depotre who's just got that little bit more physicality, hopefully they can put a rabbit out of the hat within the next few weeks of the window to bring someone like that in, because like you said, Scott, I agree. I think, like, especially in the central areas, I love what they've got in there. I love what they've got out wide. They've got so many good options. Defensively, they're solid. They've got a great keeper. Like, they're a good side, just missing that final piece of the puzzle. But then it's like, can they keep that final piece of the puzzle when they get them in? Like, that's been their issue, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's it, and that's the frustrating thing I think for Ed Still and the staff is that they had that final
Mm.
piece. I've had it a couple of times recently, and yeah, they've managed to replace Shamar Nicholson once pretty effectively. And yeah, it's the same worry we had as well that Ed has about can that happen a second time, because there's only so many times you can keep recycling before you hit a dud, and he doesn't want to be sacrificed at the altar as a result of that not working on an occasion. Just one other thing in Sarang, actually. We know what all of their issues are, but it's worth underlying, of course, that we're going to lose 3 teams at the end of this season. Which means that there's absolutely no wiggle room. There's none of this. Hopefully you can finish in the playoff position and then have a couple of good games that saves your bacon. There's none at all. So the margins for error are completely non-existent this time, and that's why their situation, I think, at the moment anyway, is just so dire.
Yeah, I'm still convinced they're not going to win a game this season. Like, it's still on my mind that it's just not going to happen. But I feel like the longer they don't win a game, the more pressure it puts on teams that play them. Because, like, let's say they don't win for 10. If you're then that team that plays them, like, you're kind of like, we can't lose to this lot. And that's kind of what they can get. So, like, they can be so bad for, like, so long until eventually it becomes like, it kind of works in their favour, if you know, in a weird way, in that teams are terrified of being the one that draws to them, let alone loses to them.
I think we need to keep an eye on their stats, really, because there may be some new records of lowness set this season. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, bless them and their fans. I do feel for you, Silang fans. Um, Another side that's been struggling, and we've spoken about it at nauseum at the moment, is called Trike. They travelled to a Union side who had just couldn't quite get it done against Rangers. Really, really tough tie. We knew it was always going to be, but they then come into a home game against Kortrijk, and you always knew it was going to be tough coming off a defeat like that. But in Teddy Tuma, they've got such a great leader on the pitch, and he was the difference in this one. Also saw a start for Victor Boniface, which was great. I liked what I saw a little bit of him. I think there's still some development for him to take and getting accustomed to kind of the Belgian league. Obviously, we know that Norway is a popular place for Belgian sides to shop, so you're always kind of quite confident, I guess you can say, in that transition from Norwegian football to Belgian football. Doesn't always pay off, but a lot of the time it does. So yeah, it was Tuma in the 9th minute from the penalty spot that gave Union the lead in this one. His goal on the 58th was just, such a good quality turn inside and before curling it into the bottom corner. At that point, you're thinking, this is the game, really. Kortrijk, again, Belgian kind of ringing the changes, drops Gay, brings back Messerdoui, plays him up front. Half time again rings the changes, brings on Kevin van den Vlies, brings Gay back on, brings Bruno back on. What Kevin van den Vlies has done to not be starting straight away when he came back is beyond me, because I'm not gonna lie, when he's definitely been their best. He was one of their best players last season. He gives them the energy in the midfield that they need, that they were really lacking with Kate and Sissoko. They didn't really have the best of games in there. They did look a little bit better when Van den Vlies was on. Selemani did get them back into the game. However, they couldn't quite find a way past Maurice to finish it off. Union did have a couple more chances, but again, couldn't quite find their way past Illich to finish it off for them. However, they win 2-1, big win for them. You could kind of feel the relief and the excitement in the stadium. They were kind of like, right, let's put this kind of unhappy performance in the Champions League and disappointment in the Champions League behind us and crack on with the league. Good win for Union. For Kortrijk, I mean, on paper, not the worst result, but performance-wise, again, you can tell Bellerseen's under pressure and he's really searching for something.
Yeah, I thought, seeing that first half, I thought Kortrijk were pretty terrible. They really were. They started badly, and the whole first half was pretty much a non-event for them. Second half, much improved. Union actually, for me, kind of controlled this game, really. They managed to get, a bad week out of their system with this performance, I think, which was important for them, because obviously they're going to be back in European action pretty soon. In the Europa League group stages. It was important, obviously, for Victor Boniface coming in, getting his debut, to perform reasonably well and get some games under his belt now as well, because there are certainly some big games coming up. The draw hasn't happened yet. We'll know in the next couple of weeks who's going to be in Union's Europa group, and we're all kind of quite excited to see what that draw holds for them. But yeah, Kortrijk, really, there's something going on inside the Kerals at the moment, and I was alluding to this last week, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is yet. I still can't. Another week on, Bellerseen, I'm convinced doesn't know what his best side is. Just some of those players just kind of aren't performing, and their output isn't good enough at the moment as well. They're a side who take quite a lot, statistically, quite a lot of shots, but there's not a lot of stuff on target and not a lot of kind of big chances created, basically. So they're not creating too much, and that's got to be a worry. Selemani obviously has come back in the last couple of weeks, and is starting to produce again, as we all thought that he would. Quality player, scoring against one of his old sides, incidentally. Doing the old respectful trick of deliberately not celebrating in front of one of his former teams, who he left, of course, in slightly murky circumstances. Those who follow their Belgian football closely will know that there's a little bit of tension between Union and Kortrijk around that transfer that still persists. So I thought that was interesting when he scored, but he handled that moment pretty professionally, I thought. They did try, they pushed quite hard to get something out of the game in the end, but in truth it was kind of too late by then. They missed a glorious chance to get a point, of course. There's quite a bad miss late on that raised all of our hairs. But Union, in truth, really, really worthy of the 3 points and generally kind of pretty good.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm just so glad Teddy Toom is still there. I love watching Teddy play. I love his kind of passion for Union. You can tell he really does embody the club in how he goes about his business and stuff. And I mean, he can play on the edge a little bit sometimes, and he loves to wind people up and kind of get in their faces, but he has got that quality in him. You saw that with the second goal, and then with the first one as well, the penalty. He's got that calmness. So good win for Union. Kortrijk, I feel like we're going to be having this conversation quite a bit this season. Let's go to the Sunday games then with St. Sluden against Anderlecht. This one was hot. A couple of drink fakes had to happen. I think it was every 20 minutes, or at least 2 drink fakes in the first half. And it's not surprising it took until kind of late in the first half of the first goals. Unfortunately for St. Sluden, Daichi Hayashi had to go off after 40 minutes with an injury. So fingers crossed, I haven't seen, but hopefully it's not too bad, because he's been good to start the season for them. I know there's talk about Hara coming back from Alaves, but at the moment that's not kind of a given. If Hayashi's out for a while, they could really do with getting Hara in, because otherwise it's just Bruno, or they're playing Kagawa kind of in behind, which is not bad, but Hayashi gives them something else. It was Anderlecht who took the lead. Sorry, Fabio Silva had already hit the post in this one, but then it was Leo Rafael who gave them the first goal of the game. 43rd minute, he makes it 1-0. Fabio Silva then did get his goal. Great cross from Adrian Treble. Fantastic header from Fabio Silva. He's had a fantastic start to the campaign for Anderlecht. 3 goals and 1 assist in the league already for him. His assist actually came later on in this game, kind of on the counter-attack in the second half. He finds Benito Raman. Raman's been linked with a move to Ghent and a couple of other teams that are looking for a striker. He just, quality finish from him past Schmidt. Nothing Schmidt could do about this one. So it finished 3-0 to Anderlecht in the heat. I think it was the Raman goal. There's this fantastic picture of Felice Mazu basically strangling Esposito on the bench. He almost made him pass out in the heat. And I'm surprised Mazu didn't pass out in the heat the way he was going at it. But yeah, good win for Anderlecht against a St. Sluden side who we know are good at home, good defensively. To score 3 past them is a really, really good sign for the Mavs.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the word quality actually there, which is a word we're probably going to use a lot in this episode. I was saying way back at the beginning, we learn again that, no shocker everybody, that quality wins you games. And that's exactly what happened here in this one. That was the real difference in the end. Anderlecht, interestingly, missed quite a lot of big chances, and they still did that this weekend. But when you're creating as much as they have been recently, it'll be slightly less of a worry for Felix Mazu. I mean the top drawer quality that Silva brings, and Rafailov when he's playing well is it's almost untouchable stuff. Very interesting to see Mario Stroikens getting a start. I thought that was kind of quite exciting. And a brave call by Mazu. Mazu was saying afterwards actually that he was really pleased with the performance, and that he felt that it was the best one since he's become T1 at Anderlecht, and he feels now that he's starting to see some of the early signs of the kind of new philosophy and structure that he wants to embed at the club. Players are starting to respond to that. I know there was this feeling in certain sections of the Mauve support that they expect a certain type of football, and there's sometimes a contradiction between what they expect and maybe the way that Felix Mazu might want this Anderlecht side to play, that they think there's a bit of tension on. But as long as they keep winning, then obviously the pressure will stay off him. And they were pretty good this week. A lot of players were kind of clicking, really nicely, and the Esposito moment was quite interesting as well, because he was talking afterwards, Felix, about how he felt he had to show him some love, because he was apparently quite vocally unhappy about not starting. I think Felice is trying to keep everybody happy. It's a difficult act. We know how vocal Benito Raman is. He's not happy. He's not going to be starting. Silva has to start, because of his quality, and there's that expectation there. And, he is absolutely first rate. And then Esposito will be expecting to start as well because of his pedigree. So it's a difficult, thing for him to juggle. So I think he's, in the very early stages of the season, obviously still trying to give everybody a bit of game time and just see who's clicking best at the moment. St. Truden all round pretty decent stuff. They've had a decent enough start to the season. We know how well they set up. They've got a really settled side now that sets up well and is really difficult to beat, as we know too. They've obviously added Gianni Bruno in an attempt to try and kind of get some more goals, and that may well come because we know he is a good player. He just needs to find a bit of a groove, and it's very early days for him at the Canaries at the moment. Interestingly, that's their that long unbeaten run they had kind of come to an end. That if you look at the tail end of last season, that amazing run that they went on, I think that was their first defeat in something like 12 games, I think. Their all-time record, I think, is a 13-game unbeaten run, which dates back to the mid-60s. So statistically, that was the end of kind of quite an impressive run. Always going to be a difficult ask for them this game against, an Anderlecht side that have a lot of quality in it at the moment. Amuzu is performing very well at the moment. Looked like he was heading out, but now it looks like he's staying. He seems to be enjoying his football. Seems to have settled down, really made his peace with Felix Mazu as well. So a lot of positives for Anderlecht to take out of that off the back of what was a generally unimpressive performance in the second leg in Europe during the week.
Yeah, the fans are definitely not happy with that performance against Pied. And Fabio Silva. It's just they've got another one, haven't they? They had obviously Kwame and Xerxes last year. Now they've got Silva this year. We'll have to kind of wait, I guess, until halfway through the season before we can say which one we think's better. But he's definitely started really, really well. On St. Truiden, my kind of biggest concern for them is just the strength and depth. Like you look at the bench and during the game, you're like, well, who's going to come off and who's going to make them better? Do you know what I mean? Like that starting 11 is the best players that they have on the pitch. Like Kagawa can come on and do something, but then Van Dessel, I like Van Dessel, but he's still young, he's still developing, and outside of that there's no one really who's going to come on and score goals for them. The fact that Fatih Kai didn't even come on when they're chasing a game kind of sums up how they view him in terms of the quality that they have. So yeah, I think obviously this isn't the game that they're looking to win, and well, obviously they are looking to win, but it's not one they're going to be upset that they didn't win. They probably would have liked to defend better because that's what they kind of set their stall at. They are a solid defensive side who will then try and hit you on the counter. So disappointing for them in that sense, but maybe it's the start of another unbeaten run next week to kind of get things going. I kind of want to put Eupen in the same category of St. Truiden this season in terms of being difficult to beat. They hosted Antwerp and they really, really dug in. I think Victor Fischer before the game couldn't help himself by having a little dig at Club Brugge. They were asking him, I think, about Istanbul Başakşehir and all that, and he was like, yeah, I've played them before. Like he played them when he was back in Copenhagen. He was talking about they're a very different side, blah, 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 blah. He's like, well, let's focus on Eupen. He's like, as Club Brugge know, it's not the easiest place to go, and like they're not they're a hard team to play against. And I was like, that's such a little dig, which I'm sure all the Antwerp fans loved. I'm sure the Club Brugge fans absolutely loved that. And for like 78 minutes, they were probably like, yeah, they are a difficult team to play against because for 78 minutes, Antwerp just could not find their way through a really resilient Eupen back four that they had to line up with. Obviously, no Steph Peters either, so they were missing one of their key players. Nuruddin dropped as we presumed he probably was going to be. In came Moser instead. Didn't have tons to do because I thought defensively they set up quite well. Like Kral played pretty well. Van Ganechten's got a great turn of pace on him as well. There was a moment where it looked like Balikwisha was getting away from him, but he shut him down. Eupen thought they were going to take the lead in this one, though. However, in the first half, it looked like they'd been given a penalty. It was Reagan Charles Cook, who's been great so far this season, up against Richie Delat, absolutely rinses him with a bit of skill. Looks like Delat brings him down in the box. However, once VAR intervenes, it was just a free kick. It is the finest of margins. Really, really tight on that one, but it wasn't given, which is a shame for Eupen because they played quite well up until then. Second half, I thought Antwerp really did take control of this game. They really pushed up quite high. Eupen were just trying to hit them on the break. Quite a surprise when Frey was taken off for Vincent Janssen. Frey looked like he wanted to hit someone. He didn't go and hit. He didn't hit Mark Van Bommel. I'm not going to go there with that. Valencia then came on as well for Miyoshi, which was a good change. I thought Valencia's was quite exciting in the midweek game, and the European game was quite exciting the week before, and he's quite exciting in this one. It was him that helped create the opening goal. the only goal of the game. Poor Boris Lambert with the own goal in the 78th minute. Open did hit the bar in this one as well. They had some chances from late set pieces, and it looked like they were going to get an equaliser. Really, really good shot on the turn. I think it was from Preveljak. I can't quite remember. Maybe from one of the midfielders instead. But Boutte basically won them the game with this really, really good save, scrambling to his right-hand side to tip it round the post. Quality goalkeeping from a quality goalkeeper. His players, obviously all the defence go up and give him kind of kudos for that one. Antwerp escape, I guess you can say, from Eupen with all 3 points. A classic case, wasn't it, Scott, of winning while you're not playing well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what this was. I mean, Eupen, this was a pretty decent performance all round for them, and they'll be, I think, deeply disappointed not to have got something out of this, considering their offensive output in this game was pretty decent. You mentioned Boutte there, and again, it's that quality point, isn't it? It's a goalkeeper kind of making the difference, and Antwerp, getting ultimately, like you say, despite playing pretty well themselves in the second half and really applying some pressure, quite aggressively, getting what was ultimately just a bit of luck, which is what won them the game. They won't care about that. Interestingly, that's the first time that Antwerp have won their opening 4 games of a Pro League season since they last won the title. Now, I've had Antwerp fans pointing out, yeah, but we've won more than 4 games in the bounce before, which is true, but they haven't won the title, and that wasn't in the top division as well. They've gone on longer winning streaks in the old Division 1B, but I thought that was quite a revealing stat in itself. And I thought, is that any indication of the sort of season that the Great Old might have? But yeah, quality from Boutez. And I'm not sure how much more Bernd Stork really could have done here, because they did perform well, and that'll be a sore one for them to take. I think you could argue to a certain extent that Antwerp are overperforming a little bit at the moment. I have that slight feeling about that, and obviously that will be truly tested should they make the European group stages. And we'll find out whether they can manage to do that, if they can get through that tough playoff round coming up.
Yeah, no, they've got a difficult one coming up in that against Istanbul Başakşehir. Hopefully they can. They got through against Lillestrøm relatively comfortably in the end, which was nice. I mean, they'll be happy just to have got the win in this one. And yeah, Eupen, they've been good under Bernd Stork to start the season. We knew he'd be a good appointment. It's consistency. They started well last season, then completely dropped off. So it's like, how much can they do consistently over the course of the season? Because they'll be just hoping to stay in the league, I reckon, at this point. And if they can keep Preveljak up until the end, to the start of September, they'll be more than happy and more than confident that they're going to be able to do that. So Antwerp win puts pressure on Club Brugge, who travelled to Leuven. Leuven's obviously had that fantastic start to the season, but then that was kind of curtailed by the defeat to Antwerp last week. Didn't play badly in this one at all, actually, and thought they'd taken the lead in the 21st minute, but it was overturned by VAR when Nacho Nsingi looked like he'd got his second of the season after opening his account last week. Unfortunately for him, VAR intervened in that one. And then it was Club Brugge who took the lead. Kasper Nielsen with a right foot shot into the bottom left-hand corner. That made it 1-0 to Club going into the break. No, sorry, that wasn't the case. Going into half-time, they were 1-0, but just before half-time, Ferran got another goal of the season. I think what a load of waffle treat. He got a goal that he's been kind of deserving more goals this season. I kind of agree. I think he's been quite good. Just hasn't quite had the luck in terms of in front of goal. Kamal Sora with the assist across to Ferran to make it 2-0 going into half-time. So then into the second half we go. A couple of substitutions from Leuven. Thibaut Lentings, who literally just signed from Club Brugge, comes on for Hamsel Mender. I mean, I feel like they were always going to re-sign him. They've had him for like ever, basically. He's just kind of been on loan permanently. But yeah, he comes on for his second debut, I guess you could say. A couple of penalties were actually given away in this one, but Van Aken decided to not score them. He just, I don't know why. And now he's been linked with West Ham again. Not sure that's again going to happen. I just don't. I just can't see it at 29 years old. I just don't think he's going to do it. But who knows? They'd get another penalty later on as well, and then Noah Lang set up for this one and showed Van Aken how to do it. Olsen going off in the 41st minute is a slight concern. Though we're hoping that's not too serious for him either. They run out 3-0 winners. It was kind of like a typical Leuven performance in that they pushed, they tried, and they played reasonably well. But at the end of the day, like you've been saying, Scott, it's the quality of Club Brugge in this game that kind of overcame them.
Yep, that's pretty much the story of this game as well, and that's what the difference was. It was the quality of Ukla. I thought Kamal Soa was pretty good this week. I think he was bringing a final product, if you like, which obviously is what he's been missing. We know how effective he is with his runs out wide. We know he can get into positions that can really hurt you, but he was just lacking the final pass at the key moment, and no final product was sort of hurting him a little bit in not getting regular starts. But now that he's had some, I thought this was his first really kind of quantifiably strong performance for kind of quite some time. Notable yet again, more changes at the back for club. The back line is still, I think, unsettled. I think we can describe it as like that. And I think until that settles down and resolves itself, then they might see some of the kind of slight kind of bumpy issues that we've seen from them in the opening few weeks. But yeah, their quality got them over the line. Kasper Nielsen will be delighted to kind of get his first goal proper. And that'll be a big thing for him. It'll be interesting to see how much this transfer speculation around Hans Van Aken affects his performances in the next couple of weeks, because obviously the window's still got 3 weeks to go. If that intensifies, be an interesting one to keep an eye on, because he would be a big loss for them. Having said that, Bruges are in a very strong position. They don't have to sell him, particularly with them wanting to find a solution to the kind of Ruud Vormer complex, if I can call it that. I know they would like to find a longer term solution to that, which tells me that they would quite like Ruud off the books, as it were, because he's not going to get too much game time, rightly or wrongly. Separate argument, of course. I think considering how well Leuven have been actually over the last few weeks, they were a little bit disappointing, I think. But they knew they were coming into a game against Club Brugge where you're playing one of the top sides. So regardless of your own form, you're going to be up against it. And they've done well. They've picked up more points than they'd already done at any other point before this stage of the season. So as we were saying last week, they've started well and wouldn't particularly have been expected to get anything out of this one. Ukla's starting to look better and better, I think. He's starting to settle. I think there's some clear signs that he's enjoying his football there now as well. He scored a few goals, which is going to help his confidence. So Karl Ofkins will be hoping that things generally settle down for them now. I still think there could be a decent amount of business both in and out of club before the end of the window, because as we know, they're kind of pretty cash rich these days.
Yeah, no, you make some really good points. I think, losing Van Aken would be difficult. Like, how do you replace him? Like, I feel like, I know it sounds weird in the sense of, like, De Ketelaar, like, I feel like you can replace him within this league in the sense of, like, you can find someone to score a reasonable amount of goals. I don't think you'll ever get someone of his quality at that age and all that sort of stuff, but you can find someone who will do a similar job. Same with Lang. I feel like he's not irreplaceable, but with Van Aken, I feel like there's just something about him on and off the pitch. Like, he is a winner in that sense. He gets important goals. He turns up when they need him to. Like, he's just that sort of like enigma player, that kind of maverick player that I feel it would be a massive loss if he did go. I think as well, yeah, you're right. I think centre back, they need to sort that out quite quickly. If Jack Hendry's not one they want to stay, if Otasawi's not one they want to keep, or they don't see him as the long-term solution. And he started Silla in this one, which is quite interesting to see. I wonder if they feel that he could be the long-term solution to that issue. But no, it looked like the Club Brugge fans had a nice day out. They seem to be enjoying their time in Leuven, really creating a good atmosphere there. So they'll be more than happy with the 3-0 win and hope that it's kind of an upturn in fortune in terms of performances and results for them. Let's go to the final game of the weekend, which saw Zulte Waregem, who came off that really good result against Club Brugge, their 1-1 draw they could have won. They hosted a Genk side who've been scoring goals for fun. However, they lost Cyril Dessers. He went to Cremonense during the week, so kind of joins the list of other players that have left them in terms of Thorstvedt and Ito. That hasn't stopped them being an absolute scoring machine. Nemeth made his first kind of start of the season, but he first start ever for Genk, which is pretty cool. Before the game, Frank was saying that while Onuachu's back, he's not fully fit back yet, and you kind of saw that when he came on, he had a couple of chances that he completely scuffed. So Frank was like, I've got players that I know I want to put in these positions, but I'll just have to wait and see. He's like, I like Nemeth, I like Onuachu. I want to give Nemeth more game time, but I also don't want to not play Onuachu sort of thing. But Nemeth gets to start and he wins a penalty in the kind of 8th minute. When I first saw this, I was like really baffled as to what had happened. It looked like Tambadou had just won the ball and that was it. It was fine. On the replay, you see that he does actually kick the back of Nemeth's foot. It looks soft, but I can kind of see once VR gets involved that it's going to be given. Upsets Brian Hayden, he makes it 1-0 from the spot. That man Nemeth then makes it 2-0. Great cross from Daniel Munoz. He's basically unmarked, just heads it underneath Sammy Bossert. And 25 minutes in, it's 2-0, and you're like, oh, Zulte Waregem, who they were still trying to play. They were playing out from the back. They were trying to create chances. One man especially, Ali Federa, had a fantastic game again. And I didn't even need to look at the stats to know that he was the most fouled player on the pitch because it was ridiculous. 7 times. And I mean, they were quite lucky that there weren't more yellow cards for this. He, according to football, won the most duels, 13, and then he also lost the most duels in 10. So he had quite a game. But it's him that gave the assist for Jelle Vossen to kind of get Zulte back into the game on the 43rd minute. Vossen, I was just looking it up as well. Like 72 games now for Zulte Waregem since January 2020 and 27 goals. When you consider that he's kind of in the back end of his career at 33 years old, he's just been fantastic signing for them in that sense and deserves all the plaudits. And yeah, Federa, I'm going to be waxing lyrical about this guy going forward. I think he was really, really good and definitely Zulte Waregem's best player. However, unfortunately for them, literally a minute later, Brian Hayden made it 3-1 to Genk. He kind of starts the theme that it was a bunch of Genk Academy players scored 3 in this one. They also scored a ton of goals for young Genk, which we'll get to when we talk about the Challenger League. He could have scored a hat-trick. He had a couple more chances, which was quite something. Daniel Munoz kind of finished off the scoring, beating Dranbayev at the back post from a corner. Dranbayev had a bit of a nightmare in this game. I thought he played well against Club Brugge, but this game he was really, really poor, unfortunately for him. Vossen also had to go off at half time, so hopefully that's not too much of an issue for them because they definitely can't afford to be missing him and Zeno Gano. Like that really does put them under some sort of pressure. But it finished 4-1 to Genk. I don't think Zulte Waregem even played that badly, if I'm honest. Like, I know it's quite easy to say, but they had 16 shots, 6 of them on target, same amount as Genk, basically. Had a lot of possession, XG not too bad at 1.39. Genk just had more quality and were just more clinical.
Yeah, Genk just blew them away, really. You know what I mean? With their, as you were saying, Ben, their kind of clinicalness, really. Zulte, lots to be positive about. We've said this a couple of times in the opening weeks. Real signs of encouragement generally, despite them not quite maybe getting the points so far over the first 4 weeks that maybe their play kind of deserved. But yeah, it was just kind of Genk's quality was just far too much for Zulte in the end. I've been really, really impressed by the way Wouter Rankin has handled things since he's gone to Genk. Regular listeners will know I'm a big fan of his, obviously from his time at Mechelen. I think he's a really good coach, and I really thought it was interesting this week. He was being asked about kind of some of the kind of outgoings at the club and the loss of some of the quality. John Lukumi's obviously away to Serie A now. Ito's gone. Bongonda will almost certainly be gone by the end of the window. And Oyen's got a long-term injury, so there's some really kind of big hits there that they've taken, and his response was to go, well, I'm not going to whine about it. I've got some real talent on my hands here, and I'm going to work with what I've got. And to come out and say, look, ultimately, it is what it is. I'm going to mould my own side and do my own thing. I thought was really impressive, because you could argue that for quite a long time now, Genk have been overly reliant on certain players who are now no longer there, or certainly aren't going to be there come the end of this window. So there's been a sense for a while that there needed to be a rebuild, I suppose, is the right phrase, and to have a coach who's good at working with young players, who likes to play really adventurous attacking football and to take risks, say, do you know what, I'm gonna work with what's here because I like what's here. And they have brought in some fresh talent as well, so he has been backed by Dimitri Decon, the director of football there, and I think he's just made a really quite good start to his career as kind of Genk T1, and I think that's encouraging for everyone at Genk, to be honest. Plenty, on the other hand, for Mbaile to feel positive about, like I was saying, despite a heavy defeat, Mbali was quite critical of the officiating in this game, no shocker, and I think he was probably not wrong about some of the calls that went against them, but they wouldn't really have made a difference to the result. They were just up against a side who had too much quality and were like other sides this weekend, really quite good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He looked pretty cool on the touchline as well in his shorts and his shirt. But yeah, no, I think the refereeing wasn't great in this game. There were a couple of tackles and 50-50s that were a bit frustrating for both sides. But that's Visser. What can you do? He'll do what he wants.
I was going to say it's our old friend Lawrence had the
Yeah,
whistle.
he does love it. You can tell he absolutely loves it. But who would be a referee? I guess you could say at the end of the day. Before we go into Europe, let's go down into 1B, or Challenger Pro League, sorry. Even though on the highlights it's still saying 1B. So, I mean, come on, someone make your mind up. What are we calling it? Kicked off Friday. Scott, why don't you run us through the results and we can maybe chat about some of them?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll give you the results. There's not too much for us to take away with it only being match day one. We know some of these sides aren't ready yet, and I think we saw that from some of the action this weekend. Verton almost managed to get 3 points against Molenbeek, but kind of threw it away in the last couple of minutes, and that finished 1 each between Verton and Molenbeek. Newcomers Denda were pretty comprehensively beaten by Lommel 4-1. Beerschot managed to win 1-0 at home against Beveren, and what we thought was going to be a pretty narrow encounter between two sides that are probably going to be pushing pretty hard for the automatic promotion spot. Club Next played out an entertaining 2-2 draw with SL16, the Standard Liège under-23s. Young Genk, as Ben was saying earlier, had a really strong 4-1 win at the Segika against Liers. They were pretty impressive. And Anderlecht Futures played a goalless draw against Denza at the Lotto Park.
So basically, none of the development squads lost in the opening games, which is quite impressive. And I know Liège fans must be steaming because that is such a poor result away at Young Genk. And they had a couple of chances. I know they hit the bar. They scored one where the keeper just dropped it on the floor and was given as a foul. It definitely wasn't a foul. But yeah, to then still lose 4-1 to a young side like Genk, who basically matched the first team in terms of goals scored. So 8 goals for Genk across both teams this weekend, which is pretty decent. Good statement win from Lommel. The Beerschot goal was a ridiculous fluke from Herve Matthijs. Definitely a cross, just flies in. Jan Vandenberg getting himself sent off. I mean, things never change, do they? Beerschot getting red cards has to be done. But yeah, interesting start to the season. It's going to be interesting to see, I think, isn't it, with the young teams? Like, yes, start of the season, they're probably going to be right up for it. It's going to be as the season goes on, will the more senior sides be able to kind of dominate them a little bit more and kind of put them to the sword? But good start to the Challenger Pro League, and we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on it as we go along. If you haven't already, definitely head over to our kind of page where you can find your podcast and you'll find our preview for the second tier, and you can hear us make predictions that always prove to be wrong, but we think we did a pretty good job with it. So yeah, definitely go and enjoy that. Scott, let's look quickly at European football. Obviously, disappointing for Union away at Rangers. I felt like they started kind of, it was very similar to the other leg, basically, where Rangers started really hot. Union kind of kept themselves in the game, then started to play and started to look good. But poor Steve van der Heyen, like, what is he doing at the back end of that first half with that handball? That kind of didn't kill any chance they had, but it gave Rangers so much momentum going into the second half that you just knew Union were going to really have to weather the storm. Unfortunately, couldn't. Mistake from Maurice as well at the back end to make it 3-0. Disappointing for Union. I think in the grand scheme of things, if you'd said before that they'll lose to Rangers over 2 legs, we'd have been like, okay, yeah, that's probably going to happen. But the manner of it was so disappointing from the side that if they could have done it, I feel, if they had just seen out that first half at least.
Yeah, I think the story of the tie, both legs of this tie is a little bit of frustration, really. I agree with you. I think, they could have got through this tie. I think the key thing was coping with the atmosphere and environment in that second leg, and I think they struggled to do that a bit. I think, they let themselves down a little bit, I think. I think there was a general feeling amongst some Union fans that they invited too much pressure upon them, and that they didn't offer enough offensively, which may have been true. But they were pretty intensively on the back foot for pretty much that whole game. And it's one of those where, key decisions go against them at key moments in that match, and it kind of really swings the momentum when the momentum wasn't really in their favour. Even before the first goal, there was a general sense that maybe they'd weathered the storm actually, and then that crazy moment on half time, just kind of swung the entire narrative of the tie really, and it's just unfortunate. The positive thing is, and they knew this going into it, that there was group stage football there anyway. And that's why I suppose the disappointment isn't too crushing, if you like, and they were able to work it out of their system with a good league win this week. But yeah, it was disappointing that they couldn't quite go there and finish the job. But there's plenty of excitement over the next couple of weeks, as I was saying earlier, to see who's going to be joining them in their Europa group, because I'm looking forward to that draw.
Yeah, no, definitely. I hope their group is one absolute dross side and then 2 really exciting sides, so they can surprise the exciting sides and beat the dross side twice and at least get Conference League football going into January, because I feel like on their day they can always shock someone. So let's hope for a decent draw for them. Moving on in the Conference League, Anderlecht beat Pied 5-0 aggregate, not surprising. Pretty poor first half. They were kind of booed by their own fans. 0-0, and Pied were pretty good, to be fair. They just lacked the quality to put Anderlecht under too much pressure. Fabio Silva then did open the scoring in the 62nd, and then Murillo scored 2 goals in quick succession to pretty much kill the Estonian challenge off. That means Anderlecht now face Young Boys Bern, which will be a much stiffer challenge. But hopefully after the result against St. Truden on the weekend, they'll go into that with some good form. Antwerp, on the other hand, they were pretty comfortable as well against Lillestrøm at home. They won that one 5-1. Anthony Valencia getting his first for the club quite early on, and then Biga Slata getting a goal in the just around the 70th minute. So they won that 5-1 on aggregate. They'll now face Istanbul Başakşehir. Scott, we kind of predicted these were going to be the 2 kind of ties going into the next round, but how confident are you that the 2 sides aren't going to bottle it and they can get this done? Because I feel like they have the quality within them and they can play the football to beat both of these teams. But playoff football in the European stuff, it's always so difficult to predict.
Yeah, it's massively difficult to predict, and there are, another footballing cliche. Everybody, there's definitely no easy games at this level at all anymore. And I think the positive thing for me is Anderlecht are, as Felix Mazzi was saying this week, there are signs that they're starting to click a bit now, and I agree with him about that. And I think that hopefully is a positive sign for them going into their tie against Young Boys, as you're saying, Ben, which I think is going to be quite a close tie. So they are going to need to play well to get through that, and if they do get through that, they will totally deserve to be in those group stages, because Young Boys are a decent side, and we know, last season that Anderlecht kind of failed to overcome a Vitesse side who I think a lot of people underrated and assumed that Anderlecht were going to get the better of. And so it's a similar feel to that. They're playing a side who actually are a lot better than I think most people who don't watch these sides regularly give them credit for. Antwerp, on the other hand, I think are going to need to up things slightly. I mean, that's arguably a the hardest tie of these two in a way. And I say that just based on the fact that I feel Anderlecht have slightly more quality in their side than Antwerp do. So they're going to need to play really well to get through that. But I hope so, because we do need it for the coefficient. So I'll keep my fingers and toes crossed for some great performances, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, it's going to be difficult for both sides. But I guess for Antwerp, it's kind of like, if you don't get in, what a chance you have to win the league this year. But it does then pile a lot of pressure on Van Bommel to win the league this year, because they'll be like, well, you haven't got the European kind of distraction, I guess. Ghent also face Ammonia Nicosia. We've spoken about that one before. They'll be up against former Ghent player Roman Bezos as well. That'd be quite an interesting one to see, but hopefully they'll get through. They've been pretty decent against Cypriot teams before. Let's look ahead to next week's matches. Friday, we have Eupen against Salang. That'll be a TV game, given some of the cancellations. Oostend against St. Truden on Saturday. Genk, Cercle, Bruges. So they're your only games on Saturday. Club Bruges, Kortrijk on Sundays. Ultravala game against Charleroi. Standard against Leuven. And then Mechelen against Westerlo. Obviously, Antwerp, Union, Anderlecht, and Ghent would all be paid later on. I think Antwerp for Union from this round of matches will be end of August, and Anderlecht against Ghent will be the day after on the 1st of September. Over to the second tier, Denza host Young Genk on Friday at the same time as Standard Youth host Beerschot. Vaasland, SK Beveren, welcome Virton on Saturday. Molenbeek welcome Dender. And then Sunday, Lommel against Anderlecht Promises and Liège against Club Next. Scott, as always, thank you very much for joining me on this two-man edition of the Belgian Football Podcast.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers for your ears, everyone.
Absolutely. And hopefully we'll get Joris back next week. But who knows? He is enjoying his well-deserved holiday. We can't say enough about that. Over to the fantasy football. I had another mare. Felferen FC is now top, taking over from Dieter van Guk, so Michael de Klerk. Peter Varvin is in third, and Alex Muzio has overtaken me into fourth position. If you want to join that, just get in touch. We can add you in. It's never too late to join, because obviously at the beginning of the season, there's so many chances for player teams to pick up and drop points. So yeah, definitely get involved if you can. But yeah, as always, thank you for listening to this podcast. If you like it, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. Get in touch with us any way you can, especially if you can remember the worst team that's played in the Belgian top flight. We are dying to know kind of comparisons to Salang, sides that you think have been just as bad. So definitely get in touch about that. But as always, thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.